Seven Wonders of the Ancient World, Part 7, The Lighthouse of Alexandria. Now, there's an island out in the ocean's heavy surge, well off the Egyptian coast. They call it Pharos. There's a snug harbor there, good landing beach where crews pull in, draw water from the dark wells, then push their vessels off for passage out. From Homer's Odyssey. As Alexander the Great expanded his empire and conquered empire after empire, he developed a desire to develop a populous Greek city which should bear its name. One night he dreamed of Homer, who recited the words about Pharos. So Alexander made his way to the location, and even though it was an appropriate spot, it was not large enough. So he established the city of Alexandria at a small fishing village sheltered by the island called Rhacotis. The site of Alexandria had been used as a port centuries before Alexander's arrival, thanks to its two natural harbors on the Nile Delta, the Great Harbor and the Harbor of Fortunate Return. Once Alexander established control of the coastal areas of the eastern Mediterranean, he razed the Phoenician city of Tyre. Then he directed his architect, Dinocrates, who'd also worked on the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus, to construct the capital with a grid line. According to a tale narrated by Plutarch, Dinocrates did not have any chalk, so he used barley flour to line the grid. As soon as he'd finished, a flock of birds came and messed up his plans. Alexander, perceiving it as a bad omen, wanted to stop the construction instantly. But his seers convinced him otherwise, claiming that the sign bore good news for the city and its inhabitants. With Tyre gone, the new capital was destined to become a trade hub. Before anyone knew it, Alexandria had turned into a cosmopolitan city, with visitors arriving from all over the Hellenistic world. Once the city was established, one problem persisted: dangerous waters. The port was quite deep, but even then it was difficult to navigate the tough weather by just observing the coastline. There were no mountains or cliffs to keep one's bearing, just a series of plain marshes. And then there was the hidden submerged land, particularly a double line of reefs. New sailors would often find themselves stranded on a stretch of sand in the middle of nowhere. From Paratonium in Libya as far as Iope in Coele-Syria, a voyage along the coast of some 5,000 states, there is not to be found a safe harbor except Pharos. And apart from these considerations, a sandbank extends along practically the whole length of Egypt, not discernible to any who approach without previous experience of these waters. Consequently, those who think that they have escaped the peril of the sea and in their ignorance turn with gladness towards the shore, suffer unexpected shipwrecks when their vessels suddenly run aground. And now and then mariners who cannot see land in time because the country lies so low are cast ashore before they realize it. Some of them on marshy and swampy places, and others on a desert region. Words of Diodorus Siculus. After Alexander passed away, the city fell to the Ptolemaic dynasty, which would end with the famous Cleopatra, 7th. Ptolemy I understood that maximizing the city's potential meant understanding the topography and taming the terrain. But this was no ordinary terrain, and for that reason, no ordinary lighthouse would do. To ensure that ships could enter and exit the port safely, he ordered the construction of a massive lighthouse on the island of Pharos. The word Pharos would later become synonymous with lighthouse in Greek. Strabo, who would have seen the lighthouse in his lifetime, wrote in his geography that Pharos is a small oblong island and lies quite close to the continent, forming towards it a harbor with a double entrance. For the coast abounds with bays and has two promontories projecting into the sea. The island is situated between these and shuts in the bay, lying lengthways in front of it. He then describes an extremity called Rhacotis, which itself of the island is a rock, washed by the sea on all sides, with a tower upon it of the same name as the island, admirably constructed of white marble, with several stories. And admirably constructed it was. The base was square, made to withhold the opera of raging waves, and the middle part was octagonal. The keeper would traverse a sloping spiral and steps to reach the top. There were several statues at the top of the tower, including Alexander, Ptolemy, Zeus, and Poseidon. A fire would be lit to attract the sailors in the night and other tricky circumstances like rain, fog, or both. Since the surroundings lacked appropriate wood, it was most probably lit with oil or papyrus. Strabo states that bronze mirrors were placed on the apex to reflect the sunlight and guide the sailors during the day. The light shone so bright that it could be mistaken for a star sometimes. Arab authors later fantasized that the tower's mirrors could be used to harness light to a single source, blinding any enemy ship approaching the harbor. In the case of fog, ancient authors speculate about a siren mechanism. The architects and builders had covered every base, which is why, according to reports, the light from the monument could be seen over 40 kilometers in most situations. The tower stood over 110 meters or 360 feet and was the tallest structure in the world at the time, barring the pyramids of Giza. But how was such a massive feat realized? The man chosen for the job was an architect called Sostratus of Cnidus, although some think he managed the project's finances and engineered the initial plans. He had been observing celestial and wave patterns for years and understood what the best location for the lighthouse was. In the end, he chose to position it on the very tip of the limestone islet of Pharos. But you might be thinking that Pharos is a separate piece of land. Shouldn't there be a direct link to the mainland? And indeed, there was one. The Ptolemaics were shrewd people. They linked Pharos to the mainland through a 0.75 miles long or 1.2 kilometers causeway called the Heptastadion. Speaking of shrewd men, Sostratus was another. And one of the greatest proofs of his cleverness is that after he had built the work, he wrote his name on the masonry inside, covered it with gypsum, and having hidden it, inscribed the name of the reigning king. He knew, as actually happened, that in a very short time the letters would fall away with the plaster and there would be revealed Sostratus of Cnidus, the son of Dexiphanes, to the divine saviors, for the sake of them that sail at sea. Thus, not even he had regard for the immediate moment or his own brief lifetime. He looked to our day and eternity, as long as the tower shall stand and his skill abide. Words of Lucian. This brings us back to Ptolemy I. An interesting thing about Alexander's successor in ancient Egypt was that he might not have been able to complete the project himself. The exact dates of the construction are not known. They could have been anywhere between 284 and 246 BCE. But we know that it took roughly 12 years and 800 talents of silver, which was 1/10 of the king's treasury, to construct it. Some historians think that he might have seen the final project in his lifetime. Others think he might have died before its completion. The latter theory is more common, and in that case, his son, Ptolemy II, would have taken the responsibility of finishing the construction. And that he did, adding to Alexandria's impressive array of historic monuments, which already included the tomb of Alexander, the Serapeum Temple, an institute for the scholars known as the Museum, and the magnificent library that was famously raised multiple times. And just like the library, the lighthouse was not immune to earthly elements either. Cleopatra VII commissioned the first restoration of the tower. The Ptolemaic reign ended with her. But when the Romans took over Egypt, their coins in Alexandria featured the lighthouse. That speaks to the spectacle and achievement of the structure. All the great things in the legendary city of Alexandria, and still no one could resist it. Greater than all else, the lighthouse was a marvel to behold. It was standing when the Arabs conquered Egypt, but by the 14th century, as recorded by Ibn Battuta, it had fallen into disrepair. By the 15th century, the lighthouse was nothing but a pile of rubles, and the Mamluk Sultan used it as a resource to construct the citadel of Qaitbay, which persists to this day. The final of the 7 ancient wonders to be constructed, and the third last to fall, it has a memorable legacy that continues to impress even today. If you want to find out more about the other 6 wonders of the ancient world, check out this playlist, and if you enjoyed this video, like, comment, and subscribe. That's it for now. See you in the next one.